Hello guys, my name is Fatai and in this video I'll be taking you through how to make use of Google Sheets, specifically logical functions, how to use logical functions on Google Sheets. And so without wasting time, let's get right into the video. So in the last video, we talked about some basic formulas and functions in Google Sheets. Today we are going to be talking about logical functions. And what logical functions are they are some sort of functions like if statement, average if, SUMIFs, which helps us to create certain value based on the input that we have. For example, we are trying to understand or fill in this field that has grass type. We want to know whether each of these row is grass type or not, which leaves us with two main outputs. You could say true or false or yes or no. So for logical functions, most of their output are usually in pairs, true or false, yes or no, um, and many other examples like that. So I'm going to explain how to make use of an if function. We have many logical functions from if to ifs, and then we have so this is if function, then we have ifs, then we also have sum if, we have average if, like that. So I'm going to be taking you through everything. So the first thing is our if statement. So assuming we want to create a yes or no input here based on the type 1 input that we have here. For example, I want to be able to tell if this row is grass or not, and you want this to be automatic because you can easily just put in yes or no here based on the inputs that you have here. But when you have thousands of rows, then you have to make use of a function to make your work fast and easy. So how to make use of an if statement and what is the structure of an if statement. So basically we can start by writing like an equal to sign just to create the if statement and look at the exact structure of this function. So how you do that is click on equal to sign and then type in if, then click on tab on your laptop. So when you click on tab, you'll be able to see what the function is all about, and this would also help you in understanding the function and using it. So there's also some examples of how the function works. So basically, if going by what is written here, an expression, a logical expression. Okay, so about this function is that what it returns one value if a particular expression is true and another if it is false. So basically, it's going to give us a true or false output. So what we need to do right now um, for this function is we want to uh, create an output of yes or no based on the type 1. So if it is grass, then we give if this row is grass, then the output here will be yes, and if it is not grass, then the output will be no. And how do we do that? First, we create a logical function. What the logical function basically means is that what we reference this cell, that is, I will click on grass and I'm going to click on equal to, then I have to click the condition, the actual condition, which is grass. Now I've created my logical function. Then when I click the comma sign, it takes me to value if true. So when the value is true, I want it to give me the output yes. So I'm going to put in yes here. So why are we using this inverted comma is because they are string, and what I mean by string is alphabet, they are not numbers. So that means what we need to put the inverted comma to make Google Sheet understand that what we are inputting is an alphabet, not a number. Then when I click the comma sign, it goes to value if false. And what value if false means is what? If this is not grass, then output no, since that's what we're using. So, and you can actually put in any output that you want here. It does not necessarily have to be yes or no, because if you look at the example here, it says A2 is 4. That is the value if true for them, and if false is not 4. So you can use any output that you want. So after writing this, you just you click on, or you close the bracket. So when you close the bracket, you click your enter. So I talked about autofill the last time. You can decide to autofill it, or better still, to get used to autofilling, you can drag it down yourself. And you notice what happened. Wherever there is grass, it input yes, and where there is no grass, it input no. So that is how if function actually works. So this is one way to look at if statement, and in this case we are dealing with an alphabetical data, or mostly I will refer to it as a string kind of data, because it's not numeric. So another option or another way is to make use of if with a numeric data. So in this case, you notice the formula is about, whenever this is equal to this. So I would term this as what? If with an equal to sign. So let's create an extra row here, and I'll call this if statement with equal sign. So equal to sign. So whereas we can also make use of if statement we can also make use of if statement with greater than or equal to, greater than or less than sign. So in this case, we are going to be making use of it with numerical data. So what we have to do here is what? The question is to give an output when the total is more than, excuse me. So we want to fill in this particular column, or want to calculate, and let us imagine it as a case study, that you have a number of data like this, and you were asked to create some sort of category that categorize them into more than 500 and less than 500. So that's what we are trying to do here. So more than 500 or less than 500, and the easiest way and the quickest way is to use an if statement. So how do you do that? Similar function equals to if, then you select, in this case you are selecting the total. We are writing our logical expression now. Then we are not using equal to sign anymore, because we want to deal with, like, we are dealing with numbers, and in this case we are not dealing with one singular number. We want to see the number of we want to identify those values that are greater than 500. So notice how in this case I'm not using it any inverted comma, because we are dealing with number. Then the next thing is value if true would be, I can now use a string for this. I can say more than 500 if it is true, and if it is false, I would say less than 500. So if we use autofill downward, you notice this value is greater than 500, so it shows that it is more than 500. This is also greater than 500 and shows that what it is more than 500. So this is how you make use of the if with greater than or less than sign. So another thing we might want to look at is the if statement. This is a little bit different from if, although they work based on, they are both conditional statements, but this is a little bit different because in this case we can validate or we can test more than one condition. Notice how here in most of the if statement that we've been using, we are actually testing one condition. In this case, whether our value is grass, and in this case whether our value is greater than 500. But what if we want to test multiple conditions? For example, we want to check if the speed is below 30, then it is slow, and if the speed is between 30 and 50, then it is normal, and if the speed is above 50 or 60, then it is fast. In this case, we need to make use of an if statement, because in if statement we can create or have multiple conditions. And so let us explore how the if statement works. So here it says condition 1 and value, condition 2 and value, and we can have more than one condition that way. Notice here it says what? If is greater than this, if is greater than this, and if is greater than this. So it evaluates multiple conditions and return a value that corresponds to the first true condition. So in this case, we want to test whether this is greater than, the first thing is 30. If it is greater than 30, and if you want to know how your condition is doing, you can click on it just to see how it's working. Then if it's greater than 30, I want to call it slow. Then the next thing is, if it is, I'm still going to click on this since we are dealing with speed category. If this is greater than 50, then normal, and this if it's greater than 90, then fast. So this is slow. You can now drag down. So because the condition actually looks at the first logical expression and returns the value if it is true, then it is advisable for you to do it from the highest to the lowest, and that's what I'm going to do now. So for this case, I'm going to change this to 90 and make it, once it is greater than 90, then this will be fast, and once it is greater than 50 to be normal, and once it's greater than 30 to be slow. So let us evaluate the condition. When speed is greater than 90, it is fast. But when speed is greater than 50, it is normal. And when speed is greater than 30, it is slow. So notice how this greater than on this, when the speed is 100, it is fast. When the speed is 43, it is slow. And when the speed is 58, 78, it is normal. So this is how to use an if statement. You can play around with it. Just make sure that you arrange your condition in chronological order, whether from highest to, mostly from the highest to lowest, so that you are able to get the actual value. And most importantly, always validate that your formula is correct before autofilling and trusting the output that it gives to you. So two very important functions that we also need to talk about is the SUMIFs and the average if. This is very important and you need to understand it. So pay attention. What we are trying to do here is we want to sum. We've talked about if and um, we've talked about if and ifs. So in this case, we want to sum and we want to create an average based on certain condition. So I've talked about the sum in the last video, but in this case, we're adding another what conditional statement to the function sum. So how do we do that? And one important thing about the sum if and average if, it helps us to summarize our data. I think that's the most important thing. Because imagine you have this number of records and you want to immediately understand the amount of the total amount that we have for grass, for fire and for water. And you don't want to do it by by just calculating. You want to be able to do it using a formula, because in most cases you'll be dealing with a large number of data. So how do you do this? You can sum based on the conditional statement, that is based on the input value of gas, fire and water. So let's do this. The first thing that we need to do is let's use the sum if based on gas. Let's say we want to understand how much the total number of value that we have for gas. Excuse me. So use the sum if. Again, let's explore the formula. The first thing here is what? Range, and I'll tell you what it means shortly. Then we have the criterion and we have the sum range. So the details here is what? It returns a conditional sum across a range. And what is a range? I've talked about it before, but it is a combination of cells. So if I highlight all this is my range. Under this name box, this is my range. So this is range, this is a cell, these individual are cells. The combination of all the cell is a range. So what the sum does, what the sum if does is what? It calculates or return a set of value based on the condition set in a particular range. So first thing here is what? Let's now create a sum if for grass. So the first thing it says is what? Range. So I'm going to select the total number of range arrive in class 2, and the range, it ranges from what? Age 16 to age 24. Then the next thing is criteria. So the criteria in this case would be equal to grass. Then the next thing would be sum of the range. So we are going to select all this, then you close the bracket. So what I've just did is I highlighted the range where this condition is, and I used the criteria along with it. So in this case I used equal to class, because if you remember in the last when we are using the if statement, we need to add like the sign, whether it is equal to, greater than, and all of that. So that's why I'm using the equal to sign along in the criteria, and then I'm highlighting the sum range. What the sum range basically means is where the numbers at, like where the number that we want to add up, because we are doing a sum, so we need like a numerical number. We need a numerical number. And so after this, you just click an equal to sign and you get the total number of basically the total for grass. So let's validate this. We click equal to sign and then we just sum. Since we already know where the grass is, we sum up all of these numbers and you see we have the same number. So guys, always validate your conditional statement because sometimes it might be wrong. So the next thing is this is just for one value, which is grass, and we can do the same thing for fire, water, and all of that. But assuming we have so many inputs and we have so many data, we don't have to do this. All we just have to do is what? We know our specific type. Since we know the type, grass, fire, and water, we can just do the sum next, the SUMIF next to the types. So in this case, what you have to do is highlight the range, but instead of using equal to, you click the type here. So it automatically identifies, it looks at the criteria within this range, basically. Then the next thing is what you select your sum range. So when you select your sum range, you get your value, and then you close the brackets and you click equal to sign. So now let's see, we already have all of the values. But something is wrong here, and this is what is wrong. If you click on this, you notice it highlighted all the range. But when you click on this, you notice one of the range has shifted. So this is the concept of referencing, and there's a way you fix it, because what happens here is the fact that even though this value is correct, assuming we have fire somewhere around here, the reference has already shifted. That means the range has shifted, and it means it is not going to calculate our value correctly. Now let me show you what I mean. Let me switch this to water, and then I switch this to grass. So basically the value for water is not correct because it's not including the 405 value here. So that brings us to concept of absolute cell referencing and all of that. I'm going to explain more on that in the next video, but how to fix this is very simple. You need to lock your cells or range. You need to lock them so that they do not shift, because what autofilling does is what when you when you drag down, it move the cells, it move the ranges, and it move the cells. Because notice K17 here becomes K18. Yeah, that's what we want autofilling to do basically for us. But we don't want autofilling to shift the range because we want to look at the range holistically. Similar thing with what H and I, those are the two ranges, and we don't want autofill to shift them at all. So how do you make sure that autofill does not do it? It is called the concept of cell locking. Basically, you use the dollar sign around your column and your row within this range. So just the way I'm doing it right now, I put the dollar sign in front of the H column and the 17, which is like the row, and I also put it the same thing here. So what this does is what it locks the range, it doesn't shift. So I'm supposed to do it on the first cell. So you do it on the first cell, you put the dollar sign, you lock your range so it doesn't shift, and this is called absolute cell reference or cell locking. Then you also do the same thing for this because you don't want the range to shift, but you leave the criteria because we want the criteria to shift. Basically, we want it to move from grass to fire to water. So I'm going to click equal to sign, and now when I drag down, notice the values specifically, even though the values are close, notice that when I click on it, the range are in place. When I click on it, they are in place. When I click on it, the range are in place. So what happens if I lock K17? When I lock K17, it will only give me the value for grass. Notice how all of the values are referencing grass. So that's how cell referencing works. We'll talk more on it later. But in this case, don't lock K17, just leave it and drag down. So the next thing is average. average also work the same way, guys. So I'm going to run through it very quickly. All you just have to do is equal to average, then don't forget to use the if, then your criteria range is going to be this. Don't forget to lock the cell. There's this shortcut that you use to lock F4, but surprisingly it doesn't work for me. You can try it. When you click F4, it's supposed to lock the cell. So I'm going to click on this and then I'm going to highlight this. Let me see if F4 works for me now. Yeah, it works. So when you click on F4, it gives you an absolute cell referencing. So equal to, let me do that very quickly. Then I'm going to highlight all of this. I'm going to click F4, so it locks everything. Then I'm going to click grass and then I'm going to click total. In this case we are averaging, don't forget. Then I'm going to click F4 again, so it locks everything as well. So here is the average value. Here is the average value for all of the cells, and you can confirm it by looking at this. Is it shifting? Yeah, this is moving to fire, this is to water. So yeah, guys, this is how you make use of average if and sum if. So I hope this part of logical functions is clear, and thank you for watching up to this point, and I'll see you on the next one.